I hope you're doing well.
Yes, sir. Can't complain.
That's good.
So the first question I would like to ask you
Hmm.
um, is how did you become interested in law?
Well, actually, uh, I was born in Oglethorpe County um, on Lower Wild Bridge Road. That's in Stevens, Georgia. That's about maybe 30 miles from Crawfordville. I grew up on a farm. Just to give you a background, grew up on a farm. Grew up in a neighborhood where everybody was farmers. We had a farm. My granddaddy had a farm. So actually, we had no television. We didn't have television. We actually didn't have radio. We, of course, you had outdoor plumbing and all of that. Didn't have electricity. So as far as being a lawyer, that wasn't something I had ever envisioned because hadn't ever seen a lawyer growing up on a farm, plowing a mule and cutting wood, pulpwood, and all of that. So in 1965, my father passed. So we had to move to Athens because my mother couldn't drive, and we were basically there with 110 acres of land, and I couldn't farm it. My brother was in the army, so we moved to Athens. And so when we got to Athens, I started to work and during the summer and also after school. But at some point in time, it came in my spirit that I was to be a lawyer, and it came from God. This is just how it happened. I never met a lawyer, never even seen a lawyer on television because we didn't look at TV. The only television we looked at, we had to walk maybe 2 miles to look at television at our cousin house. And the only thing I looked at was Gunsmoke and boxing on Friday night. We would go there and we would look at Gunsmoke, and then we would look at boxing. So I wanted to be a boxer, and I could box, and my brother wanted to be a boxer. And of course, I wanted to go in the army. And so, when we moved to Athens, and then it just was revealed to me from God to be a lawyer. And I told my mother that I was going to be a lawyer. I had never met a lawyer, couldn't name you a lawyer, didn't know who Perry Mason was, or anybody. She was the first person I told that I was going to be a lawyer. And that's how it came about. It was a revelation to me from God. And I didn't tell anybody else about being a lawyer but my mother. And of course, then I went in the army in 68. I wanted to go in the army, and I wanted to finish high school. That was my prayer to God, bless me to finish high school and go in the army. Because I understood going in the army, there were opportunities. And I wanted to get away from Athens, and I knew there weren't any opportunities there. So I knew the army. My father was in World War II, and my brother was in the army, and my uncle was in World War II also. So it was just something in my blood to go in the military. So I went in the military, and I didn't share with anybody, no friends or anything, that I was going to be a lawyer, wanted to be. And so I came back from basic training in 1968, and I had a girlfriend, and she wanted to get married, and I told her I couldn't marry because I may go to Vietnam. If I go to Vietnam, I may get killed, because we were losing friends already. We had lost, I think, Jeff Whitehead, and we had lost another friend. It was Sam. Edward. We had lost him in Vietnam. So when I told her, she thought I was crazy because I never shared it with her. And because of that, she left me. She told me she didn't want me. So I didn't let anybody else know until I had gotten out of the army. And I came back home, and I told my friends that I was going on to Savannah State and I was going to be a lawyer. That's when I told the world, basically, that's what I was going to do. That's how it came about. It was a revelation from God. I can't credit anybody with why I decided to be a lawyer other than God spoke to my spirit, and that's what he said. And that's how it came about.
So what law school did you attend?
Let me say this and just give you background on that. I after going to Savannah State, I knew about I had learned about Southern University through a friend, uh, Ronnie Lewis and Jerome Baker. They went down to Southern, and they have a black law school there. Southern is one of the top HBCU schools in the nation. Southern has a law center now. So they told me, said they went to Southern. We had been talking about law school once I got in college, but I had looked at Howard. But when they told me about Southern, well, I said they were there, Jerome and Ronnie. They was a year ahead of me. So I applied to Southern, and that's how I went to Southern. That's how I chose that law school. Where the University of South Carolina at that time, they were recruiting African Americans on this affirmative action. Well, I didn't want to go to a white school because, if you go in there on the affirmative action, they think that they gave you something. I didn't want that. I wanted to go to HBCU. Howard was my first choice. I didn't have the finances to go to Howard. I wanted to go to Morehouse was my first choice. I didn't have the money to go to Morehouse. So I chose Savannah State. It was a great choice. And I chose Southern. That was a great choice. I wanted to go to Howard because I had learned about, when I got in college, I learned about Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton, Houston. So I wanted to go to Howard. But then Savannah State had some great lawyers there. And Bobby Hill was one of the greatest lawyers in the country, but drugs took him out. He was a great lawyer. Bobby was great. I learned about him when I got there. I really didn't know. I knew about Bobby's brother, but I didn't know Bobby in the extent that he had risen to. So that's how I went to Southern in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and that's where I got my law degree. And the other thing is, God spoke to my spirit and basically told me to come back to Elberton. And I share this with you. I shared it with a lot of people. When I was at Savannah State, at that time, my mentor, professor was, of course, Dr. Marilyn. Marilyn taught me psychology right there she was my teacher my first year. Well, Dr. Hayne Walton was the professor of political science department. He was my mentor, and Dr. McIver. Well, they wanted me to go to get my PhD, to go and come back to Savannah State, get my PhD in political science, and come back and be a professor. Well, the interesting thing that took place, they sent the application in, and I did a submission, and and they would have paid for all of my expenses and everything to get my PhD on a fellowship. It was called the Danforth Fellowship. And Senator Danforth was a senator he was a U.S. senator, and that Perino Chow, that dog food, they owned that. I mean, they were billionaires. So anyway, and I had applied to law school. I applied to only one law school, that was Southern. So what happened, they did not mean the fellowship. They rejected the fellowship application, even though I had the grade and everything. I didn't get the fellowship, but I got admitted to law school. Well, at that point in time, that was the confirmation from God that I was to go to law school, because had I gotten the fellowship with a paid fellowship with all expenses, housing, I would have been tempted to go and get my PhD, because that's what they was encouraging me to do. So when I didn't get the fellowship, and they came back to me and they said, look, you should have gotten the fellowship. We don't understand why you didn't get it, because your grades and everything were sufficient enough to get it. And I told them at that time, I said, look, I don't want to reapply, and I don't want you to do anything. I'm going to law school. So that's when I knew that was what God wanted me to do. And so that's how I ended up going on to law school, because that would have been too much temptation for me to turn down a fellowship and go to law school when I didn't have no scholarship to go to law school. I had saved my money, and I had some veteran benefits left. I had enough money for one semester, and I didn't have a loan. I didn't have a loan to go to law school. But I said to God, that's the way That's what you wanted me to do. I'm going even if I don't stay but one semester. So that's how I ended up going. And I went and I finally got a loan from Athens Federal in Athens, Georgia, because the banks in Savannah, they wouldn't loan me any money. And it was really because I was very active, you know, on the student, for the student government. I was always raising, objection about things that was wrong. And somehow the people at the bank decided they didn't want to loan me the money because I was too political and too outspoken. But I said, I got enough money for one semester, and I had some VA benefits left. I had about 6 months of VA benefits left. So I had that, and I said, well, I'm going. And that's how I ended up going down to Southern. And believe it or not, I was able to go, ventured to get a student loan from Athens Federal. They loaned me the money. I borrowed $3,000 from them. And that's it. I got some more veteran benefits. I finished law school. And when I finished law school, I was in the top 10% of the class. And they wanted me to stay in Louisiana because they wanted all the top students to stay there to take the bar in Louisiana to make the school look good. Well, I told them I couldn't do it. I had to go back to Georgia. And I told them I was going to open a practice in Elberton. So that's what God had put on my heart, to go to Elberton, because my wife was from Elbert County. And so I came back, and I took the bar the first year, because I was the first Black to go to Southern and come back to Georgia and take the bar. So I took the bar, and in 1978 in July, and I made 6 or 8 on the exam. I felt that I passed the bar because I just knew the question. But I got 6 to 8. I didn't get discouraged. I went in and so I studied for 6 months. I just locked myself in, not 6 months. I got the result in the January of 1979. I locked myself in and I studied, I guess, just about day and night. And I took the bar in February of 1979, and I passed the bar. And then what happened, I knew I had to stay in Elberton. That's what God had put in my spirit. So what I did, I tried to find some work. First of all, I tried to get a job with the Georgia Legal Services. For some reason, they wouldn't hire me. I went and interviewed with them. So I wanted to work at least a year, about 2 years, then move into private practice. But they would not hire me. And at that point in time, I said, Lord, I don't want to go to Atlanta, because I knew Maynard Jackson, because I met him through Bobby Hill and others. I knew people in Atlanta. And I contacted him. He would give me a job at the solicitor's office. But I didn't want to go to Atlanta. My wife had a job here. Then I knew people in Gainesville, some friends over there, and they told me they would try to get me some work in Gainesville. That was a growing city. But I didn't want to go to Gainesville. But I had a friend, Frank Bates. You remember Frank Bates?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Frank and I were friends. We took the bar together in 1978. That's where I met Frank. So Frank got a job with the Toon Circuit District Attorney's Office as the child support director. Well, when we took the bar the second time, Frank told me about it. So I went to the district attorney's office here in Elberton, Cleve Miller, he's dead and gone. I talked to him. I said, do you have any work? Do you have this child support job? He said, no, I've hired somebody. So anyway, I said, well, I knew right then I had to do something. So I was looking at Gainesville. I hadn't got my bar result. So I was at home one morning. I was going to Gainesville to look for employment there, and then I was going to go to Atlanta. Well, as I sat there looking at the Phil Donahue show, I'll never forget it, I got a phone call. And I picked the phone up, and Cleve said, this is Cleve Miller, the DA. I said, yes, sir. He said, do you want the job? I said, yes. I said, when do you want me to come to work? He said, immediately. So he gave me what happened. This policeman he had given him the job. The policeman decided that he didn't want to do all that work because you had to basically do the work to generate your pay. So I went and met with him. He gave me the job. And so I had 5 counties that I had to go out, pull the record from the defects to find all these guys who owed child support for kids that were on welfare. That's what I had to do. So I did that for 2 years, but the blessing about it, I got my bar results in May. And of course I passed the bar and I was sworn in. And at that point in time, they allowed me to do some work outside of the circuit, some civil. Long as I did some civil work, I would do it the criminal, as long as it didn't interfere with my job. So anyway, I worked with the DA's office from 1979 to 81. I built up the base of the number of guys I brought in and got them to pay their money back to the government for child support that the government had paid out for their children. So that's how I got my start. And then in 1981, I opened a private practice in Elberton. And I've been in practice since 1981, full time. So that's how I started. And believe it or not, it was all from God. And I give him all the credit and all the honor because, I couldn't get any help from anybody but the Lord. He's always set it in place because my father was dead. My siblings, they didn't have any resources. My wife, she had to work just to keep things going. And so that's where we started.
So what kind of law did you practice in your private practice?
Well, to be quite candid with you, I was drawn to doing civil rights work because, first of all, because kind of what I had seen. So I ended up, I had to practice, I had to know everything. In a rural area, nobody gives you anything. The blacks don't trust you and the whites don't like you. So you had to work hard, and I had to work hard. I had to learn to do criminal work, civil work, that means lawsuits, defending people on divorces. I had to learn to do real estate. And I learned to do all of that. It was a lot of work. And then I got dragged into doing voter rights cases. Well, then I had to learn that. And nobody would teach you anything. Ken Dyer in Athens, he was my mentor. He had been practicing law about 5 years ahead of me, about 5 or 6 years. And I did clerk for him, but he didn't have it. I did it basically for free because he really didn't have any money because he wasn't making any money. And because when you're in a rural area and you're a solo practitioner, you have to depend on what comes in the door. And then you got to manage it. So to answer your question, in the 80s, I did criminal defense work. I represented people for murder and all of that. I did divorce work. I did everything civil. And then I started doing federal work. I did employment discrimination cases. I did voter rights cases. One of the first cases we did was in Elbert County. Mr. Long, who's the president of the NAACP, I've been an active member with the NAACP for, I guess, for almost 50 years. So what I did, they wanted to change the voting procedures in Elbert County so blacks could be elected to office. Well, I had not done any federal work. So what I did, I went out and found some lawyers who had this white lawyer named David, get his last name, but anyway, he was a Jewish lawyer. I brought him in to help us. Well, he was a lead counsel. We sued the city of Elberton to change the voting process from at-large to district so blacks could be elected. Well, I was on there as one of the lawyers. And because I was in Elberton, of course, everybody looked at me, and which I learned from him how to do voter rights work. After we did that case successfully, we settled the case after we did deposition. And then the next civil rights case that we did, a major case, we had no blacks in the fire department in Elbert County. Well, they came to us about uh, that case, you know. So we sued the city of Elberton on that, and we won that case. Myself, and that time I had two other black lawyers with me, Ken Dyers, Willie Woodruff, and Bill McGriff. We won that case. There was two major cases that we won, and by us suing them and forcing the city to hire black firemen, we ended up with a black fire chief, and he stayed. And we got two black firemen now, but you know, if you make some gains, if you don't continue to work, you'll lose them. And then the next major case we did, I was doing all of this while I'm doing criminal cases, divorce cases, just to put food on the table and pay bills. Well, then Gainesville, they came to me, they said they wanted to change that voting system. And so we sued the city of Gainesville. Well, before we got to that, let me retract. In 1987, we sued Hardwell. They didn't have any black elected officials countywide. So we sued them, and we won that case in federal court. But at that time, the whites threatened to kill me. You know, they put a reward out on my life. They put a reward out for me and Prentice Mayfield, who was the president of NAACP, and they basically said if anybody would kill me, they put a reward of $5,000 out on my life. And of course, at that time, and we knew it was true because our friend named Robert Robertson in Savannah, he was killed. They blew him up same time. And Judge Vance in Alabama, they blew him up, and they sent a bomb down to Jacksonville and would have killed some of the people with the NAACP. So there was a target out for me, and of course God took me through that. I don't know, but I knew some of the white folks in Hartwell. They were rough, man. I'll be honest with you. They were rough. They were tough people. I must confess that. So we made it through that. Could we pause for 1 minute?
Yes, sir.
Pause for 1 minute. Okay. So, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
So, that case in Hart County was that was a tough time there because having your life threatening, you knew the seriousness of it. And of course, the Constitution, Channel 5, they came down and interviewed us, and people called me from everywhere. But that didn't stop me from doing what I was called to do. And the next major case we had, after we prevailed in that case, people from Gainesville came to me, and they wanted us to file suit there. Well, at that time, people were calling me from everywhere, and I didn't really have sense enough to say no. So we went into Gainesville, and I tried to get the ACLU and other group to help us because it took a lot of money. You have to have experts and all that. But when we got to Gainesville, we went in, thought we had the support financially to get experts. Well, when it came down to it, we didn't. We filed a lawsuit, and then this law firm out of Rome, Cartersville, around Rome, Bob Bretson, one of the top defense lawyers on voting rights cases. He defended these cities and counties. He had been up to the Supreme Court with the case we had from from Burke County. So David Walbrook had helped us in the first case. So we sued, and that was a case that really taught me voting rights because we sued, and Willie, it was just myself and Willie. Willie had a solo practice. He's out of Decorah, first black to practice law at Decorah. So we got started, and the people, our plaintiff, they didn't raise the money. So I really had to finance the case because Willie's practice was struggling, and I was able to generate more money because I had more blacks in Elberton, and they really were supporting me. And then I was getting a trickle of white. Once white people see that you will fight, they'll tend to come to you, not because they like you, but because they respect you. Well, anyway, we got that case started in 91, I believe. We sued in 93. We went to trial, and we didn't have the money to hire the top expert. We had a friend down in Atlanta, Jerry Wilson. He was a voting rights expert. We had a 3-day trial, and I knew at the end of the trial that we were going to lose. I knew it, even though the facts, we had the facts.
Mm-hmm.
The law was on our side, but we didn't have the top name expert. You can have the facts can be right, the law can be right, but if you don't have the right expert, you lose. So we tried the case for 3 days, and what hurt us too, Gainesville, the blacks in Gainesville, the preachers, they didn't come out with great support. They didn't show up in court. We were there trying the case, and just a handful, and a lot of stuff that we knew about. People were afraid to really come in and talk about how blacks have been discriminated against. And I understand that because they didn't want to offend white folks. So we did that for 3 days. And the judge, at the end of the trial, I'll never forget, the judge O'Kelly, who's dead and gone, he asked me, because I was lead counsel, he asked me, he told me he was ready to make a ruling right after the case was closed. And I told Willie, my partner, I said, this man gonna rule against us. So I asked the judge, I said, Judge O'Kelly, would you give us time to do post-trial briefs? The post-trial brief is simply your argument in writing on why the judge should rule for it. That was to keep from being basically embarrassed right there at the end of the trial for him to rule against me. And that would have shortened the time of me being able to pull together some support to appeal it. So after we did the post-trial briefs, he ruled against us. So then I was able to get enough money to order the transcript. And once I got enough money to order the transcript and file a notice of appeal, but then I had to get the transcript. Well, and in the interim, I went to a national NACP meeting out west, I think it was Wisconsin, I believe, or St. Paul, that's where it was. And I met this lawyer named Brenda Wright. I always went all over the country. And she was with the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights. I met her and I talked to her. I said, look, I need some help. And I told her about what we were doing. She said, well, you send me the brief. I mean, not the brief, but the transcript. So I had the transcript. I had to pay $2,500 for the transcript. And we didn't get paid but $1,500 to try the case. That's what all our clients gave us. So I got the transcript, paid the $2,500. I paid that and sent it to her. Once she read it, she called me back. She said, we'll take over the case on appeal. So that's when I was able to bring in some big guns. So that case went on for 12 years. 12 years. We won the case on the second trial. Then they appealed it again, Brinson. And when it went up again, the 11th Circuit sent it back. When it went up, we appealed it the first time, they reversed it, sent it back, and we had a new trial. Well, we won on a new trial because we brought in the top expert in the country on voting rights. His name was Dr. Instrom. So when we got through trying that case, I think that was in '97. When we got through trying the case, I told Willie, my partner, I said, we won the case because we had the top expert who had been before the Supreme Court to basically testify the same fact that my black expert did in the first case. But because he was renowned across the country, the judge, I knew we were going to win because when I saw how the judge was nodding his head to everything he said, I knew it. He didn't pay the other expert any attention. So that's what, when you got the money in these cases, you could win because you can get the top expert, even though they don't say any more than just a first, young expert. It's just the fact with their age and their credentials and all of that, the judge gave more credence. So we won the second time on that case. That was a major case. And then they took the case back up and they argued, they took it back up on some issue. The court sent it back for a hearing. The judge told the opposing counsel to look, I'm not going to admit any other evidence. But what they did, because the blacks in Gainesville had moved out, they left the inner city. We no longer could prove that we had enough black geographically compact to create a single member district because they had moved out. So we drew lines, but we could not prove our case because of the demographic had changed. See, on the voting rights cases, when you cut those districts, you got to prove that, first of all, you got to prove that you got enough blacks, geographical compact, to create single member districts. We couldn't do that 11 years later. This case went on for 11 years, man. And, but the judge, he really wanted to uphold the court's decision, but we went into mediation for a whole day. And the interesting thing, this case was, a real interesting case. We sat there, the judge told us that Judge O'Kelly, I'll never forget, he told Bob that you all need to settle this case. And Bob told us, he said, well, if we'll settle the case if the opposing counsel waive all attorney fees. I mean, we worked in this case for 12 years. I said, man, you got to be kidding. I got upset. And then Bob told me, they won't settle for anything. But then the judge asked Miss Figueroa, who was the black mayor of Gainesville, he asked her, did she want to settle the case? All she had to say was, yes, the case should be settled. We got racial division here. Blacks can't get elected. All she had to do was say that, but she wouldn't say it. So when she wouldn't say it, then, the judge said, well, we'll just get ready for trial. And we knew at that point in time, our expert told us to look, we're not going to be able to prove our, our case anymore because of the demographic change. So basically that ended that case. That case, I was 39 when the case started. I was 51 when the case ended.
Wow.
I'm 39 when the case started. And just to show you how things are, when we beat them in the retrial, Bob Brunson, he wouldn't even speak to me. His Smitty, a guy named Smith, he called me. He said, how did y'all win the case? I told him, I said, man, look, we should have won the case from start. You know the facts. And they just could not stomach two black lawyers beating the old white law firm. They couldn't deal with that. And so at that point, that was in 2001, I believe. And so I realized then I had to cut back because it was weighing me down. Because I had done 1983 cases, police brutality. I did them too. I had sued Morgan County Sheriff Department, Sheriff Pritchett, for arresting my client for no reason. And the judge threatened me with sanction because I sued the sheriff. And what the sheriff did, just to show you, these 1983 cases, those boys didn't like me. And because I wouldn't back down, but they made sure that I didn't make any money. So I sued that county, the sheriff department. He locked my client up, kept him locked up for 30 days for that. Well, he locked him up because my client criticized him for not dealing with the drug problem in Rutledge, Georgia. And when my client did that, he had him arrested. And then after he arrested him, he tried to make my client plead guilty to some job. My client wouldn't do it. They dismissed the case. And I sued him on the First Amendment because my client spoke out against him on his job. And I sued him under the Fourth Amendment for illegal seizure, for locking him up. Well, we went to who was Dudolph Fitzpatrick. Yeah, he was a federal judge. Well, what he did then, when I went in, we went in, we did discovery and everything. We had gotten to trial, and they filed for summary judgment motion. And Dudolph, he dismissed my Fourth Amendment claim on the seizure, locking him up, but he said the sheriff was wrong for abridging his First Amendment. Well, for him speaking out. But the damage was done by him locking him up under the Fourth Amendment. The damage, he spoke out. The question is, if you speak out, if you don't lock a man up, then there's no damage. Well, he threw out my Fourth Amendment claim. So I appealed that to the 11th Circuit. And so they looked at the case. They called me one day. I was sitting in the office. And I was sitting in the office that day. They called me and said, they asked me, do you want to settle your case? I said, yes, I'll settle the case. There was a mediator. They said, how much do you want? I said, look, I said, I spent $7,500 of my money in this case, discovering everything. I said, I will sell the case for 21,000. That's what I said. And they told me, said, well, we'll give you $1,000. I said, $1,000. I said, that's an insult. You know what they told me? They said, you may not get that. I said, well, I just won't get it. I said, I'm not gonna sell it. And they threw my case out. Just low down. That's what they did to me. I'll never forget that. But that's what I had to go through. But in the meantime, I was doing a lot of other work, bankruptcies. I did bankruptcies and everything to generate income because I had to have income. So I found out bankruptcy was easy cash flow. I could do that and make some, and I introduced that to my partner Willis so he could stay afloat. So we were able to stay afloat with bankruptcy cases, and while we were trying the other cases. So that was one of the last major cases I had. I had to cut it. After that case and maybe a couple of more, I quit doing federal work because, the judges that Reagan put on the bench in the 80s, those judges were racist rascals, man. I remember, just to share this with you, I remember that I was down in Macon. I was doing work with the ACLU. When ACLU needed somebody to come in as local counsel, I would do it. They called me, John, would you go here? So I was down in Macon with a case out of Putnam County. It was called the Clark case. Well, at that time, Lee Parks had sued Putnam County challenging those districts. So they called me to go down and with this lawyer from out of Washington, I think her name was Maha. She was Egyptian, she's dark skinned. So I went down. I really vouched for her. I wasn't doing the argument, but I had to be there with her because she was a member of the Georgia Bar. So it was Hugh Lawson. Hugh Lawson was another federal judge, low down racist. He was something, man. And so Hugh, I think Hugh is still living. Lawson not living. Anyway, we were in court that day, and Lee Parks was arguing the case, and Hugh said this. He said that he didn't understand why blacks were still coming into court claiming with the ACLU and the NACP with these cases, And he jumped on her, and she didn't know what to say because she wasn't from the South. And I was appalled. So after he got through talking to her, I asked, I said, Your Honor. He said, yes, Mr. Clark. I said, may I speak? He said, yes. I said, Judge, I can't believe you said that. I said, I grew up in the South. I know how we were treated. I said, if it weren't for the ACLU and the NACP, we had nobody. And I told him, and he said he apologized. But I had 2 cases pending before him right then when I was telling him that, employment cases. And he ruled against me. He was going to rule against me anyway. But, that's the stuff I had to go through with. And they made sure I didn't make any money. They made sure that. When the word got around, if my name showed up, if it was money in the case, they made sure they threw my case out. Mm-hmm. And another major case I had a wrongful death case out of Putnam, not of Putnam County, out of Morgan County. It was worth over $1 million. And I sued the Morgan County school system because what they did, my client's child was allowed to leave the school without her parents picking her up, this person to sign her out. The rule was ministerial that if that child was let go out of school before the bus, whoever picked her up had to be on the sign-in sheet. That was ministerial, meaning that was absolute. They could not decide whether somebody else could pick the child up. What they did, they allowed the child to leave the school on a phone call, which violated what we call the ministerial policy, which allowed you to sue the school and avoid summary judgment. But I sued the school, and I just knew I had won that case. I was looking at $1 million, by $300,000 attorney fees. And I'm not going to call his name. He was on the Court of Appeal. He was supposed to be a friend of mine. At least I thought. I had supported him over the years. And the case went up on appeal. I went up and argued the case, knowing that, the law was on my side, the facts was on my side. And I needed his vote and one other vote. The panel was 3. I needed 2 out of 3 to win it and keep from it being thrown out. I knew if it wasn't thrown out on summary judgment, they were going to pay me the money. Well, I was sitting in the office, and I got the decision from the Court of Appeal, because the district judge threw it out, and I knew they were going to do it, and I took it up on appeal. But I got the decision, they ruled against me, and I didn't understand. So anyway, this guy called me, and he said, he called me he's going to go to appeal. He called me, and I asked him, I said, man, why did you rule against me? He's black. He said, well, I never got one of these cases. I said, how could you do this to me? I said, the law was on my side. The facts. And he told me he never got one of the cases, man. But they used him and this other white guy to deny me that case. That would have been $300,000. So any cases I got that I would have gotten a major fee out of, they beat me down on that. But God took care of me. That's why I'm still here today. I didn't need them, because I thought about it. And God called me from across the state, said, man, we know you won. I said, no, they threw my case out. But what God showed me in that case, this guy, and I knew him, his friend, I had supported him. He said, had he ruled in your favor, you would have owed him for a lifetime. And so, and God showed me, he said, I'm going to take care of you. And he did. That's why I'm still here. Can I take a break, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
Let me take a break. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes, sir.
So that and what my plans were to this effect, that I wanted to, that I made the money on those cases, that I wanted to set up a legal foundation so I wouldn't have to run up and down the road. I really wanted to concentrate on voting rights, some employment, but police brutality. Those are cases I wanted, because, I hated injustice. See, I saw my daddy locked up for no reason when I was a little boy. We were down in the wood. The sheriff came to the house one Friday and took my daddy to jail for no reason. They was come in our house because we owned land, and they would say we were selling alcohol, bootleg, moonshine. We didn't. And they would tear the house up, throw everything over, and we stand outside looking. And then this white man that my daddy worked for before he went in the army, after my daddy moved off his land and we bought land, he killed our horse and then our mule, and he terrorized us. All that stuff I saw. And I, as I look back, I know that was God shaping me. And then another thing I never forget, and maybe that has, I know it did. We were out there at Stevens I was around about 6 years old, I believe. And Daddy went to the store. The store is still there at Stevens. Daddy wanted some Prince Albert tobacco, so I was in the store with him. So when he asked this man for he said, I want some Prince Albert tobacco. This white man told us, boy, you meant Mr. Prince Albert. And I'll never forget that. And there were 6 white men standing there with the others around the stove. And Daddy looked at them, and they looked at him, eyes locked. I'm looking at my daddy, and my daddy said, yes, sir. And it really bothered me. So when we got in the car, I told my daddy, I said, Daddy, I wouldn't have said that. And he told me, said, boy, don't ever say what you wouldn't do. They would have killed my daddy right there in front of me. And that stuff stuck with me. And then when we had hogs, I'm just going back, regressing a little bit from what shaped me. Our hogs used to get out. And if they got near this white man's place, he would kill them. So we get out of school, and we get home like this time of the year, and the hog was out, be dog, we had to go in the wood to find the hog. Because if the hog got near this white man's place named Pearl Acre, he would kill him. So all of that kind of shaped me. I know it did. But I never developed hate. But I had a zeal that I didn't know where it came from. Because since I didn't know anything about Dr. King, really. I'm gonna be honest with you. The thing that stands out to me with Dr. King was when he was killed in 1968, we was at my mother's house. We had a meeting with the East Side Boys Club, and we were eating when the word came out that King had been killed. I had no real concept of the civil rights movement because we did not, coming off the farm, we had no TV. 6 to 5, we went to work. I worked during the summer. I worked at night because we had to help raise ourselves. I was the oldest one, oldest boy. My brother was in the army. He had married. So I really didn't have a concept of civil rights until I got in the military. Then that's when everything started developing, but something was in me already. So God had laid the path for me, and I just followed the path. So that's what happened. But they made sure that they didn't allow me to get any money because I wanted to set up a foundation so I didn't have to run out everywhere. I wanted to be able to study and litigate and bring others along. But that wasn't their plan, and God had his plan. Because what I did in that meantime, I always studied the Bible. I taught Sunday school. I started Bible study at my home church there on Lower Wide Bridge Road. I started Bible study at other churches, even while I was practicing law. So had I been able to make that money, that would have taken me, away from what God had in store for me. So God kept me grounded, didn't allow me, because God could have moved at any point, and I would have easily gotten that money, but he wouldn't let me have it. So it was all in God's will. I didn't lose. God said, you can't have that. That's what happened. That's what happened.
I want to ask you now, Calvin Turner he was my oldest uncle, and he led the civil rights movement in Tyler County.
Right.
And I want to know, how did you become involved with him?
You know what? I don't know. Calvin found me, and he was a blessing. I don't know how. My name got out there, and Calvin came to me. So, and we, from then on, we were up until his passing, we were best of friends. That's all I can say. How he found me, I'll just assume through people telling him about me, because I grew up in Oglethorpe County, so he knew people in Oglethorpe County, and Calvin in Athens. So that's how we got together, and he was a man of a man. And when we were able to save the school there at Springfield, and I was representing Calvin, that was a blessing. We went up to Supreme Court ruled in our favor, and that case there was one of the cases that stuck with me. A couple of more, but that one the most. But yes, your uncle, he met me, and he was a mentor to me. Joe Smith and Annie Jackson, Tolliver County was just like home to me. All of them going on. I come driving around there, Frank Bate, Annie Jackson, Calvin Turner, Joe Smith, all of that. It was a blessing.
So tell me about that school case. Tell me about it, and what were the highlights to you about that case?
Well, the whole thing was the ownership aspect of it. The ownership. And of course, Michael Hogan was representing the other side. I was representing Calvin in that group. And the whole thing was ownership. Had we not won, the school wouldn't be there today. I'm sorry. That was the highlight. The ownership was the key thing to keep it the way it was, and for y'all to be where you all are with it. That was the central point of it, the ownership. I think they were arguing about reversion. I have to look back, but I know it was ownership question. The Supreme Court ruled in our favor.
Mm-hmm. So did y'all go to D.C. for the case?
Georgia Supreme Court.
Georgia. That's okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we argued the case. We won in Tolliver County. Judge Stevens ruled in our favor, and then they took it to the Supreme Court, and we won at that level too. We won at 2 levels. We sure did. So that was the key thing. had we lost that case, uh, you wouldn't have had school there. You wouldn't have had it. And then at that point in time, everything was just going down. And had Kevin not asserted, had moved on, it's just like it would have been lost. That was a
Yeah.
piece, that would have been a piece of history that would just have been lost. And that case that was more like the highlight of my career. And I put it that if I had to say one case was the highlight, that would be the case. Every county cases we won, they were, but it was just something about that case that was a highlight. And then when I see you all and Terry and what you're doing, that confirms to me, God using me and Calvin and those people who really stood for the community.
So how long did that case last? Do you remember?
I think that case lasted maybe 2 years, I believe. From the time we fought over it, we tried it, then the judge ruled in our favor, Judge Stevens. Then it went up to the Georgia Supreme Court, and then they ruled in our favor. I think about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a highlight there. I'll be honest with you. And like I said, coming to Crawfordville is just like another home for me.
Well, Attorney Clark, I appreciate your time, man. I think that's all the questions I have for this interview.
Well, I thank you for taking the time to interview me, man. I really do. It's an honor. It's an honor that you took the time, because just to sum it up, Crawfordville is special to me. Of course, growing up in Oglethorpe, but then developing friends, and then Calvin died, Joe died, and Annie, they passed away. They were very close, And then for Terry and you all to come up, it's special.